Welcome everyone. Today is class 2 of Hotel Evening and Weekend Platoon. Today's Tuesday, April 8th. Today's lesson is on LLMs and speaking to them. But before we get started with our lesson, we're going to have Jordan and a couple Gulf Evening and Weekend students drop by and answer some of your questions. Adam, please delete that folder and recreate another one. I think what's
Okay.
happening, and I don't know what you did, but I think you're probably nesting gits, right? So there's multiple git and nits nested, right? And VS Code is confused. That's probably what's happening.
Okay, so I should just wipe the board and
Yeah, wipe everything, delete it, and then how are you guys opening a new folder on VS Code? There's a couple different ways to do it. How are you doing it? How were you
I
taught?
um I am well I'll fork what I need to, and then from that fork I will clone it using the URL, and then I put that into the I do the git clone, and then I just do it from there.
Yeah, but that doesn't answer my question.
Oh, is that
How are
not
you
what you asked?
opening VS Code?
Um just through the what the is command bar, is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Or
I
the
will
shortcut?
in the terminal.
I will show you. Think you guys
I
are
do it through
confused
the
with my
terminal
question.
I
Okay. The
you
terminal
type
is a way you should be doing it, but you can drag the
where you
folder
type in
into VS
code or
Code as
whatever.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple different ways to do it. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Excuse all the junk on my screen. Okay, let me share my screen here. Here, share. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a couple different ways to do it. Like I have this test folder that I just created. You could just drag it onto VS Code and open it, and I'll open it, right? Something you probably should get really comfortable with is just the command line, right? Your CLI. I always have it just in my toolbar because I use it a lot. And if you have a Mac, it's a little different from Windows, but just actually on Windows, you can default where your shell opens, right? So if you're on a Windows, Google it, figure out how to, every time you open your shell, you should open to desktop, right? I'm on a Mac, and if you're on a Mac, you know you never open to desktop. It opens at the root folder. So I'm going to CD into desktop. And if you haven't done that Linux survival class in the pre-work, you need to, because all of these CLI commands are really, really important just for being a dev. You're going to come to realize that normal people, when they work through a computer, they do what? They use their mouse and they click through things, right? Right. But developers sometimes don't have a GUI, right? Their servers, when people say the server is just another computer that you don't own that's somewhere, it could be far away, right? It could be in your closet. We don't know. Well, I hope if you have a server in your closet, you would know that. But sometimes they don't have GUIs, right? They don't have graphical user interfaces, right? So how do you interact with them? Use the CLI. Make sense? So GUIs are for people that are not developers, right? CLIs are people that are developers, right? Normal people, they use their computer and they check email. They order DoorDash, right? Actually, I don't know if anyone orders DoorDash on their computer. They probably just do it on their phone. But developers, right? They need to do a whole host of things, right? Your GUI is very limited because they can't put a million buttons on the screen, right? It would take up all the real estate. But the CLI is not limited where the GUI is. The GUI is limited by how much space you can and how many buttons you can add. That won't overwhelm the user. But the CLI can do anything. You could delete uh, all your boot up files if you wanted to. It would effectively break your computer, but you could do it via the CLI if you wanted to. Why would you do that? No one would, but you can, right? Is there a GUI button for that? No, right? So when you think of the CLI and the GUI, they're meant to do the same thing, but the GUI is orders of magnitude more powerful. That's why we use it. Right? Yes. So if you go
Yep.
in here, you can go into desktop,
Hey,
and I know.
Guillermo,
Go
if
ahead.
you're trying to show your CLI right now or your terminal, we're only seeing a blank like your screen extension.
Okay, sorry about that. Uh,
There you go.
Yeah, when you dragged it over there, we saw it.
Okay,
Now
here.
it's
Sorry
back.
about that. I messed up my thing. Okay, cool. So I'm here in my terminal. Then you can just check ls is just list that specific directory, and I know I have a test folder, right? So I can cd into test, right? And I can do code dot, and then just open it that way, and then I'll open up the same thing. If you're not comfortable with the CLI, I suggest getting really comfortable. Depending on what role you end up with, you'll probably just exclusively use the CLI. Eventually, there's a lot of like high-speed tools with VS Code and another third-party software where everything's GUI based. I think there's even one for GitHub where you don't even have to do, git pull or git fetch or git add or git commit. You can do everything in the GUI. I still don't use it. I suggest you learn the CLI first, and then eventually, whatever job you end up at, if they have really high speed GUI tools that you need to use, go ahead and use them. But initially, that will do you a disservice. Makes sense? Because sometimes you're going to be stuck. You can talk to Jordan about this. Jordan is a DevOps engineer at DRW. Like nothing at DRW has a GUI. Everything's CLI. Make sense? And if you need
Yeah.
to go in there and execute files, you don't need a GUI, right? You're running cron jobs or you're just executing files or speaking to third-party applications, there's absolutely no need for a GUI, right? That's just what extra code that a company would have to maintain. There's no point to that. Okay. Cool. Sorry about that. Let me move this here. Okay, so you can see that it just opens it. Okay, cool. You can choose either of those two ways to open it. If you don't already have the terminal within like your shortcuts, I would use it. I mean, you could also do, was it command space bar on a Mac and you just, was it iTerm or whatever? You can do that. Whatever the case may be, whatever's faster, or just have it on your little bar thing, icon. So you can just open it real fast. Any other questions?
If you don't mind just walking through like the initial part of the exercise yesterday, like just to see it again, but if we don't have
Yeah.
time,
Which
that's
one?
really cool.
Yeah. Which
Um,
one?
Whichever one will be shorter, easier for you. I mean, we could do the poetry one, yeah, because the other one's going to be a little more involved, the
Yeah.
pairs. So if you don't mind just walking through that, that would be just cool to see again. But yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is just the paradise.txt. Give me
Yes.
1 second. Here you go. This, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna go back. I'm gonna clear that, and we're gonna try this. Boom. Jordan should be coming into the classroom here shortly, but we can pause it. We can finish after. It's not a big deal. All right. So it says you might be a programmer, but there's no reason you can't express your artistic side. You'll get practice doing some basic things on the command line, go through the Git cycle, and you will see it over and over again. Fork this repository so your GitHub account has its own copy. I don't really need that. Clone your Ford copy somewhere in a sensible that is sensible on your machine. Okay, this is kind of an important point. Uh, and this is actually really, really important what I'm about to say. I'm going to pull this. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when you look at your terminal, there's two important tenets to Linux, right? Two important tenets. When you're here in the CLI, right, you need to know two things. Who are you and where are you? Who are you is what kind of permissions do you have, right? Are you root? Are you super user? Are you some kind of user with limited permission, right? And where you are is where in the directory and the file tree you are. Why do you think those two things matter when you're navigating through the CLI right here? This is my CLI. Why does it, who you are and where you are, why do those things matter?
To make sure that you have the appropriate admin privileges to create or build something, and then also to make sure you're building it or deploying it in the correct location. Otherwise, you'll have no idea where the hell it is.
Perfect. That's exactly why. And you need to keep that in mind. And you have no idea how many people coming into the program or just coming into development in general they'll try executing like an app or executing their file or trying to find something. And I'll simply ask them, where are you right now? And they don't know. You're going to try to execute a file in the wrong directory. It's never going to work. Right? You're going to try to execute a file that you don't have permissions for. It's also never going to work. You're going to try to execute a file that you don't have permissions to, and you're already in the wrong directory. That's definitely never going to work. You see how simple that is, but how complicated your situation can get, right? If you're trying to alter or even find files, but you don't know where in the file tree you are. Okay, so keep that in mind. We'll continue this after Jordan's little spiel. Go ahead, Jordan, take it away.
Are you still recording? You're not, right?
Yeah, I am recording. Why? Do we need to pause this?
I mean, this is
We'll pause it. We'll pause it just in case someone needs to say something, colorful. We're gonna go ahead and get started, do this little activity, and then we can, give me a second. We can take a break. Here we go. Just gonna run through this. Okay, can you see my screen? Move this.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So let's go through all the steps here briefly. So before we took that little break for you guys to ask questions to the golf evening and weekend students, we're talking about the two tenets of Linux. It's something that I want you to take with you forever. As long as you're in software development, software engineering, you're going to need to know those tenets. And when something isn't working, that's almost one of the first things you need to check, especially early on. Eventually, it'll become second nature. You'll know where you are at all times. It'll be even subconscious, but right at the beginning, I find that students get lost on this all the time. All right, so make sure that you are in the right directory, you have the right permissions to execute whatever it is you're trying to execute. All right, so this is the Git poetry. So it says, hey, fork the repository. You go up here. It says you don't have any forks to create a new fork. You don't have to add a description. I'm going to create a fork. This is going to do this. Okay. So it says fork, and then it says clone your forked repository somewhere sensible on your machine. I suggest that everyone here have a folder on their desktop called Code Platoon, and then you can put everything in there. So it's just easily accessible. Don't put anything. Don't put anything at the root of your file tree. I see this all the time. Like in here, I wouldn't put stuff in there necessarily, unless you feel comfortable with that. Just put it on your desktop, it'd be easier. Okay. CD, I'm gonna CD into test, because that's eventually what I'm gonna put it. All right, so I clone this, and then the next thing says clone your fork repository. You can just go up here, go clone, and I can do git clone, and then I can just drop that in there. And it's gonna be inside my test folder, which is on my desktop. It's gonna clone it, and I know that it's in there, I just did that, and I can open it with VS. Well, actually, it doesn't say to open it with VS Code, so I won't do that. It says using the command line, add a verse to the poem. How do I check what's in there?
ls-la or ls.
Yeah, I could just do ls, and I know that Git poetry. And you're going to notice that my terminal is color coded. The color pink just indicates it's a directory. So I can go ahead and CD into it, tab to autocomplete, and I notice a couple things when I go into this directory. What do you notice? I went into the directory Git poetry, but then I have this little green word called main. What does this tell you off the bat?
That you're in the main branch.
Yes, and Git has been initialized on this repository, right? That's what that tells you. The minute that says that, say, hey, Git is tracking this folder, right? And I can do Git branch, and I can see what all branches. Okay, there's only one. Cool, 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 cool. And I can also check what's in here. Let me check what's in here. Okay, there's two files. There's a README, and then there's a Paradise edited, right? And I can take this command, right? It says, hey, run this command. And what this is going to do is going to echo, which says in Bash, is just print or console log in JavaScript, right? So it says, hey, print a buggy program lacking any tests. And this is what's known as an append operator or redirect and append operator is two greater than signs, right? It says, hey, add it to the end of paradise edited.txt, right? So I'm going to run the command. Cool. So in Linux, no output is always good. Output is always bad. It's a little counterintuitive, but you need to keep that in mind. Okay, so you see, I saw no output, right? And it says, and you can notice, right? I get this exclamation mark 1. It means, hey, my get init is tracking that there's been a change to this directory, to this file, right? And you'll learn this one, but I can just cat the output of that, right? Parasite.txt is just saying, hey, show me. I don't want to really go into the file, but just show me in my terminal what's in there. And it shows me what's inside that file, right? So it's in there. Now, if I really wasn't sure if that was the right answer, I could just open it with VS Code, right? I can open it, and does that match? Yeah, right? But you can take that command and let's look back in here. It says, feel free to add more lines if Muse is speaking to you, right? I can go ahead and just copy that command. Actually, you can go in your terminal, right? And you can go up arrow. That's going to cycle through your previous commands, right? So I can go up, 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 and there's my command that I ran earlier, right? It says a buggy program lacking any tests. I can go ahead and add to it, right? Chicago Bears Super Bowl champs 2026. Hit enter, right? So that should be another change to that file. I can check my VS code. Look at that. Boom. Right? And then, so I added an extra line. Now it says add commit and push your changes. Okay. Does anybody know what the shortcut is to add a terminal to your VS code? It's what? I wanted to open a terminal here.
Control and then the button above tab.
Yeah, control backtick.
Okay.
So I open it, and you're going to notice a couple things, right? This terminal right here that's built into VS Code is the same as this one. Notice the directory is exactly the same. Keep that in mind. There is no difference at all. Some people like to use it in VS Code, but sometimes you're looking at a file that's too big. I typically like to have my terminal windows on a separate monitor because sometimes I'm running multiple things, and I just keep my code on my main monitor, right? But these two things are the same. They do the exact same thing. So keep that in mind. All right, so I'm in here. I can exit out of this, and I can use and I can just use this terminal, and we can go here, and it says add commit and push your changes. Okay, so I'm gonna git add, and I can add that specific file, right? I can add parasite.txt, press tab to autocomplete, or if I want to just add everything, I could just do git add dot enter, and notice that the exclamation mark changed to a +1, right? Saying, hey, you're adding this. So git add, and then it needs a commit. I can commit, and I could say updated paradise file. Git add, git commit, boom. And it shows this is your change right here on main, boom. And then it says, I need to push. So I can go ahead and push, git push. You can select origin main, but if it's already set, if you cloned it from origin main and you push, it's going to push it there because that's the only place it knows. Now, here it assumes that where you cloned it is your original branch and it's going to push it to that branch. But is it possible to push to different branches? Yes. I won't get into that right now, but you could, not hypothetically, you could in theory push to a bunch of different branches with just one command, right? But here I'm going to push, boom. And then where would I go to check this change that I made? On GitHub. I can go in here and I can do what?
Just go to the top directory, top folder of the repo.
Top directory, top folder. Where in GitHub do I go to see my changes though? That's what I'm
Oh,
asking.
you got to go to your own. Are you in your own?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, account. Um, yeah, just click on. Actually, you're already there.
Okay. So, but
It's
how
right
do
there.
I
So
see it?
just click on the file itself.
Okay, I'm gonna click on the file. There you go. That wasn't like a trick question, right? I can see it since I forked it and I cloned it into my GitHub, right? These are changes are mine, right? There you go. So that's pretty simple. Here's a command you're actually going to use a lot. I use it all the time. Let's say you're writing writing some awesome code. I'm going to save it, right? If I do clear here, it's going to say, hey, exclamation mark one. There's been one change. And you can also see it here on VS Code. You can click it. You can click it and that'll show you the change, right? It'll show you two files and you'll notice green is an addition, red is a subtraction, right? So that's the change here, right? And let's say I don't want to add it here because I really want to really do it on a different branch because I don't know if this fix is going to work. This is probably one of my most used commands at work. Git switch, C, and test branch, right? Hey, I don't want to change main. I want to change. I want to save this change because I don't know if it's going to work and I don't want to mess up my main, right? Switch that change and bring that change with me. All right, so I switch it. Notice exclamation mark one, but now the branch is different, right? Now I can do git branch. Now I have two branches. I branched off a main with my change, right? So now I can do the same thing, git add, git commit, right? Git push. Push didn't work, right? Can anyone tell me why push didn't work? You just read the output.
It says there's no upstream branch.
Yeah, this is what I did during the pair yesterday, I remember.
Yeah. All right. So what is the issue? I need you to explain to me what the problem is here.
You have to set the upstream for that branch.
Correct. But why?
Because it's not on your Git repository.
Yeah. So main, right, where I clone from is on there. But look, if I go
Yeah.
in here, there's only one branch. It doesn't know. The remote repository doesn't know that I created another branch locally, right? So tell remote that you created a different branch and you want it to track it because you're about to send it up. And Git's really helpful. It gives you the command. All you have to do is git, paste it, push, boom. Now let's look up here, right? I'm going to refresh here, right? That's showing that I just pushed it up, but I'm going to refresh. Look at that test branch, right? And I keep parasite, writing some awesome code. Right? So now I have two branches, and I could do that an infinite number of times if I really wanted to. Right? All right. So now the last part of the challenge just tells you to do a pull request, and GitHub is really awesome. Let me just do main. Here I can do compare and create fixed your crappy code. Create pull request. Then when you're at work, you'll copy this and you'll send it to whoever's reviewing it. Typically, you add whoever's reviewing your code, but sometimes I like to make sure that they know that I finished it and to look at it as soon as possible and tell me how crappy my code is, make a million comments so I can fix it and have a slightly better day. That help?
Yeah, thank you.
Boom, boom, boom. Good stuff.
I have a
If
question.
you, yeah, go ahead.
So when somebody makes a change, there's a little button that pops up, and it's almost like accept changes, and that will change the code for you automatically. Is that correct?
Which button can you point me to that direction?
Well, it's not here because no one has reviewed this yet. But like, let's say whoever you send it to, said, okay, I'm going to make some changes or make some suggestions, and it comes back to you. What I saw was that there was like a button just to kind of accept the changes, and it changed the code. It changed the file.
Okay. Okay, you're asking a really great question here. Typically, whatever company you go to, right, they're going to have an SOP of sorts of how they do things. Now, things like GitLab and GitHub and Azure and all the other ones, Bitbucket and all those, right? They will let you do changes remotely on their platform and then commit them. I hate that. Can you tell me why I personally hate that? And I suggest you don't do it.
It kind of seems like the easy way out.
Yes, but also what starts to happen if people are making changes remotely?
It gets out the repository gets out of sync.
Yeah, you start getting, depending on how many people are, dude, if it's one guy pushing and one guy reviewing, easy. But a lot of the time, it's not just one guy, right? Sometimes they tend to be even small applications or thousands, if not tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of lines of code, right? And maybe they're not working on the same file, but they're working on different parts of it. And maybe they're pulling from the same dependencies file, right? And things start getting really messy if you start doing that. So I personally don't like it. And depending on where you go, they will just not allow it, right? So everything has to be done locally, right? So all the branches stay in sync, and it's just an easier to me and easier workflow. So I recommend that you do not do that, right? Because if people start making changes, right? Making changes on there, then what's the point of a person's commits, right? And also, it's not your reviewer's job to fix your crappy code. It's your job. They'll comment it, you'll fix it, you'll push the changes, I'll update the pull request automatically, right? And then they'll review it again. Make sense? And sometimes, right, think of what you're asking of the reviewer, right? You can accept the changes with no conflicts, right? And here, there's absolutely no conflicts. But if there was some kind of merge conflict, where a merge conflict is when you're a local repository, right, and the remote repo are different on the same line, on the same file, right? Your reviewer is not going to know which one is right. Chances are you're the only one that's going to know, or you and your peer, because you're the ones heads down on that repo, right? Your reviewer doesn't know. So they could never even fix it if they wanted to, unless they spent hours looking through all the code, figuring out what the issue is and how to fix it. But that's not their job. That's your job. Make sense? So yes, it's a very nice feature, and you asked a really great question, but I would advise to stay away from that as much as possible. Like at AWS, you're not allowed to do that. You can't do that. The built-in tools don't allow that. That's not an option. Any other questions, guys? Great question. Sorry, I just ran. You asked a really good question. I had to answer it for you. But yeah, that's a big brain question that typically we don't get this early on.
Okay, if I can test the policy of no dumb question. Back when you use the append function in the command line, and you're using the two right arrows, like let's say if you wanted to add another line to line 6 of the paradise edited text, and you're going to use those two arrows to the right, you spaced before the arrows. Yesterday I made the mistake and not included a space, and it did something really kind of funky. And I was hoping you can kind of explain what it did. Like, so if you could take the space out of that little thing, what it does is kind of like creates and I don't think it creates a new file, but it does something really weird.
It's the other way around. So when you spaced it, it did that. We like both of our terminals have to have no space, and then it actually does it.
What did yours, Guillermo? Did you have a space, Guillermo, or did you have no space?
You know, I had a space.
Can you do
I
without
don't. I don't think the space would make a difference. It should be the same.
We were there with Jordan when that happened, and both me and my father's terminals, if we had a space, it would just go to nowhere. And Jordan said he didn't know what was going on.
You know, I don't. It's always a space, by the way. Typically, there's always a delimiter of a space in Bash. But why it did that or why it's doing that, I don't know Bash well enough to answer it. But typically, a delimiter is always a space in Bash. You can take that to the bank.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, and don't put ellipses in your in your comment or echo. I had a really funky thing that happened with us yesterday. When I actually added the ellipses, triple dots. So
Yeah. Main important thing before we stop for a break here to keep in mind. Linux commands, get comfortable with the basics, moving around directories, making files, making folders. If you don't know the redirect, I forgot what it was even called. That's fine. You don't have to know everything, but the basics like moving around, creating files. Cat is a very common command because sometimes you don't want to open VS Code, right? You just want to see, hey, is the file, does it have what I need, right? So just the most popular of those commands, definitely worthwhile learning them. Get really, really good with Git. You have no idea. Once you get to your first job, and this is one of the things that no one ever tells you, none of the YouTubers about breaking into tech ever tell you how important Git is in version control. You're going to get into many, many situations, especially early on. I got myself into that situation like last week, where it'll be some scenario like you finish a PR and then your manager will be like, hey, grab, Michael's changes, put your changes on top, send me the PR or send me the CR, right? But that dude changed like 30 files, right? So now you're combining these two giant PRs and then you're sending it, right? That could eat up 4 hours of your day. That could eat up your entire day. It could be 7 p.m. and you're still not done and they expected it by 5 p.m., right? It's a pain in the ass, right? So being good at Git will save you a lot of time in the future. It's really, really, really important. I know it's not sexy. I know it's not building a really cool app, right? But every single job that you go to will have some kind of version control, some kind of online repository. You only need to know one because all of them, the ideas are conceptually are the same, right? Branching, merging, PRs, CRs, whatever they call them. They're all conceptually the same. The UIs are a little different if you're using Azure or Bitbucket or Code Commit or GitHub or any of them. The UIs are a little bit different, but all the concepts are exactly the same. So just learn GitHub really well. And if your company uses Bitbucket or GitLab, you shouldn't have any problem at all. I'm using GitLab right now, but most of my experience is in GitHub. It doesn't matter. The idea is the same. I never have any problem with it. But sometimes where I do have problem is fixing some merge complex or some esoteric Git histories that you need to change or roll back, right? Where 90% of the PR is right, but there's some mistakes that need to be removed. And you don't want to copy and paste everything because it's 50 files. That's going to take a while. It just makes more sense to delete the commit. Think about it. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 6:54. Take a break. Back at 6:54. Let's get started. As we mentioned earlier, today's lesson is just about talking to LLMs. And before I start this lesson, just want to give a little spiel about using ChatGPT and Gemini and Grok and all those and Copilot. A very unique thing happened at Platoon over the last, how long has ChatGPT been out? 18 months? 2 years? I don't remember. Something close to that, right? What we
Yeah,
notice
pretty
in our
close.
what we notice in our application is everyone's application all of a sudden got really, really good. But the caliber of students we got was the same. What does that tell you?
ChatGPT got good.
Yeah, ChatGPT got good. And like any disrupting technology, it typically tends to stratify a population, which means people that are good get better and people that are bad get worse. And there's less of people in the middle. So that's the main thing that I really want to impart upon you right now, is be really careful using it. And I think Sean touched upon it when the golf evening and weekend students came through. He said, hey, try to solve it first right? And then asked ChatGPT if you can't figure it out, because sometimes you're missing like a colon or a comma or something like that. And I can't stress that enough. I think what we've noticed over the last 18 months or almost 2 years is that a lot of these tools are becoming crutches for students, where very few students actually know what's going on, but they've gotten really good at copy paste, which is unfortunate for the job hunt later on and for your career as a dev. Can you cheat your way through this course with these tools? Absolutely. Have people done it in the last 18 months? Absolutely. A bunch of them, actually. I had Rich Luby, you met him day one yesterday. He messaged me a couple of months ago. He's like, hey, dude, how many people are using AI on their applications now? And I said 90+%. And he said, no way. And I said, way, that's what's happening. And so I would caution you to using it, because when you get to the job, you're going to come to realize how limited these LLMs are. And they're limited for a million different reasons, right? And I just want to touch on a couple of the reasons why they're so limited. Well, the main reason, well, I'm not going to say the main reason. I'm just going to give you a couple of the reasons. One of the reasons that you're going to run into a lot, especially when you get to your job, is that there is a cutoff date for all these LLMs, right? It was trained on data up to X date, right? And then they release a model, if you understand or read a little bit about it. And what you're going to realize is when you're updating dependencies or updating an application or fixing something that broke, you're going to realize that it's the application broke because of a recent change. A recent change which the LLM wasn't trained on. So it can't help you fix it. A lot of the problems you're going to solve, when people talk about being a dev and solving problems, you're going to solve problems that are a lot of the time one of one to your company and the way that your company is running that specific code, right? Because let's say you have a piece of code, you have a file, you have an index.py file that runs a little program, right? And you're thinking, oh, that little program is the same. It's going to do the exact same thing everywhere. That's not true. Right. Whether it's running locally, it's running in a container, it's running in a container on the cloud, it's running on a really restricted environment without internet access. All these things, depending on what the script does, is going to affect what the code does. Now, the code may be the same, but depending on what environment, how it's being executed, it could not do anything. It could do unexplained things, right? It could not run at all. Does that make sense? So a really important thing to understand is how limited they are going to be once you get to the job. Now, some jobs, my girlfriend works for General Motors and they block all the sites, right? Because they don't want any of their proprietary like stuff being punched into these LLMs. Why? Because if you've read the disclaimers, once you punch it in, it's theirs. That information is theirs, right? So your job could take that approach. Your job could take the approach of giving you your own LLM. At AWS, we have Anthropic. We have a couple LLMs that we can use if we so choose to. They're not particularly helpful because a lot of the problems that we're solving are very esoteric, right? They're very unique to our customers, to the internal code base. And guess what? Your internal problems, there isn't enough of them to train the LLM on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. So it's incredibly limiting, not in this program. I mean, if you want to just copy and paste it, you can. But the problem is once you get to your job, being able to solve those problems and kind of explain how you're trying to solve the problems at a high level is going to be very, very challenging for you. So that's it. I'll leave it at that for the simple fact that don't do yourself a disservice, right? And we've noticed it a lot. People have really amazing code, but when it comes to solving those very novel problems, you're going to have to solve at your job. It's going to get really, really complicated. We have 2 AI tools at my job. I never use them because they're pretty much useless for everything that I need. What they're really good at is summarizing things or refreshing my memory. It's like a good Google outside of that. Go ahead, Cisco.
I just wanted to add, much like your girlfriend's environment, you may come across a situation where you also have a closed environment and you don't have access to the outside internet. So, so you don't have access at all to anything like that. It really behooves you to, know how to code from your own personal knowledge.
Absolutely. And a lot of the times, a lot of the issues that you're running into is going to be in your own environment. I'll give you an example. At AWS, we have an internal tool called Brazil. None of the LLMs were trained on Brazil. Not even our LLMs were trained on Brazil. Can they help you with our internal tooling and deploying on our environment? No, right? So not very helpful. And that's just one example of one internal tool. When you get to your job, they're going to have a whole host of internal tools and internal pipelines and internal everything that you're going to have to use to build out whatever it is that you're going to build or whatever it is that you're going to fix. And at that point, it's also going to be incredibly limiting. So yes, while it may be pretty helpful doing this stuff, it won't be very helpful once you get to the job, unfortunately. And it's not like you can take your entire code base and plop it into ChatGPT and it can help you solve the problem, right? And the last thing that I'll say, actually, before we really jump into it, is just remember, and probably one of the most important things that I've learned about LLMs is that they have to give you an answer. And they'll make it up if they don't have it, right? Which is not helpful, right? So keep that in mind. That's probably one of the most important things that I learned using these things. Okay, so you guys can see my screen, right?
No, you're not sharing.
No.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Here we go. I'm going to share my, and you can go ahead and follow along. This is day 2, how to talk to LLMs. The first example it just gives is if you ask ChatGPT how to cook a steak and you give a very vague question, you're going to get a very vague answer, right? And it kind of talks about the importance of thoughtful questioning. And concept 1 to me is probably the most important. What kind of answer are you looking for when you're asking ChatGPT? And this idea of breadth versus depth. So take a moment to consider the scope of the output you're looking for, right? Do you want, like, let's take the steak example. Like, do you want a step-by-step guide, right? Are you cooking a porterhouse? Are you cooking a ribeye? Is it an inch thick, right? Are you an animal and you want a 2-inch thick steak? Like, what is it that you're looking for? Do you like medium well? Do you like it medium? Do you like it rare, right? So this concept of breadth versus depth is really important. Are you looking just for a down and dirty, quick, simple answer like a Google search, right? Or are you looking for, hey, I need a very detailed answer to my question, right? So it's number 1 because I think it's probably the most important. Basic prompt writing technique, number 1, is be very specific to what you want. Do you want a step-by-step guide, right? Do you want just a broad general overview? What exactly do you want, right? What kind of answer do you want? So let's look at these prompts. Let's look at prompt 1. How to cook a steak, and it gives you all of this output. A little long and mostly full of generic information. Let's try asking for something shorter, specifying what kind of output we want, being specific, right? Write a paragraph form summary on the different ways to cook a steak, and it gives you steak enthusiasts have a plethora of cooking methods, choose from, each offering unique culinary, blah, 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 and it gives you that. If you want a simpler answer, then by all means, ask a simple question. Now, if you want a thoughtful response or a response in a certain manner, like a bullet point list or a step or a list of steps, you definitely need to ask that. That's probably one of the most important things. Be very, very specific. I'll give you an example. If you ever attempt, and I'm sure many of you have already done this, to debug using ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever the case may be, you've probably already noticed that you get the best results when you're very, very, very specific, saying, hey, I have this code. I think it's doing this, but I keep getting this answer, right? What could be going wrong? Or help me debug this, right? You're going to get a better answer, right? Instead of just punching in some code and saying, hey, this keeps erroring out. What should I do? Those two are completely different questions. Can we agree on that? Be very specific, number 1. Basic prompt writing techniques set limits. In addition to telling the LLM what to do, it's often a good idea to tell it what not to do. This is often called guardrails. Tell it what not to do. Also important. This allows you to more effectively control the nature of the resulting output. If you need to establish multiple boundaries, it's easiest to pass guidelines in as a list of rules or exceptions. So technique number one, be specific. Technique number two, set limits. So this would be a really good example. Write a paragraph summary as a creative copy prompting a particular fictional celebrity chef, different signature methods for cooking steak. Let's apply some rules. And it gives you these rules, and then you get something a little bit more curated, right? A little bit of a better answer because you were very specific as to what you wanted, and you set some guidelines, right? So number one, be specific. Two, set limits. Three, provide a deeper context. You won't always be looking for a summary. If your goal is most effectively leverage the power of AI, you should have an idea of how to ask it to generate the output types, such as lists, tables, code blocks, or graphs. Like if you're looking for an answer to a coding challenge in Go, say, hey, give me an answer to this coding challenge in Go, not using high order functions. That's a very specific question, right? I need you to answer this specific challenge in this specific language, not using any high order function, right? But if you don't give any of those guidelines, you just say, hey, just solve this coding challenge. It might give it to you in JavaScript. It might use high order functions, right? Maybe you care about time and space complexity. If you don't know what that is right now, that's okay. Maybe you give it a specific guardrail saying, hey, use the most optimal space and time complexity that you can find, or that can be done given this coding challenge, right? That's going to give you a much better answer. Provide deeper context. So here are 5 elements of a good question: role, task, background, example, and output. By instructing the LLM to assume a particular role, this is actually one of my brother's favorite techniques. He'll say, hey, pretend you are a world-renowned physicist. Explain how, the Andromeda galaxy is eventually going to, collide with the Milky Way, or whatever the case may be, right? That's actually really, really helpful, right? So that's role. That's something like that, or assume that you're a Nobel Prize-winning author. Explain, Catcher in the Rye and its deep significance to a male coming of age, or something like that, right? I give it a specific role. I give it a specific task. I give it a little bit of background, right? Does anybody know what example and output is without going into it? I'm sure you've seen it before. Maybe some of you have, some of you haven't.
Yeah, an example would be it could be a document, or it could be a table, it could be anything that's formatted in a specific way that you like it to replicate, and then the output is more or less the same thing. You're basically trying to get it to output the answer or response in the way that you would like it to.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It would be something along the lines. And if you combine all of these 5 elements, you're going to get a very good LLM response, right? You give it a role, you give it a task, you give it the background, right, for deeper context, right? And then examples would be like the example that I gave about the Nobel Prize writer. If you give it examples of what you want it to write, like example 1, this is an example of something that I really like, right? And this is what it looks like. And then you give it example 2. This is kind of the idea that I'm looking for. Maybe you give it an example about dogs, but you're asking it about cats, but do it in the same vein as this, right? That would be an example. That would be an example. That'd be number 4 and number 5. An example of what you want and the output that you want. If you're following along, I'm just going to take a minute. I think this is a really good example. So I'm not going to read it for you, but I do want you to read it. So let's just take a minute and read it.
Sounds like Chef Gordon.
Exactly. I think yeah, that's in that vein. So guys, you could even copy and paste this, right? And edit it for your question, right? And then this is ChatGPT's response. I think this is an older version, like 3.5. I'm not really quite sure what version ChatGPT is on right now, but this is exactly what it gives you, right? Kind of exactly what you asked for in the role that you gave it. Okay. That's pretty good. There you have it. Next technique is iterate and refine. As demonstrated above, be prepared to refine your prompt if you aren't getting the results you want. Of course, you'll want a strong off the start possible to save you time and resources when working with limited tokens or cost-based transactions, right? If you write your first prompt, right, and you write it exactly like this, and you don't get exactly what you want, right? You want to tweak your prompt and send it again, right? You want to tell the LLM, hey, what things you liked, what things you didn't, and what you're expecting to get. And if you have more examples, feel free to give them to the LLM. That's going to help you. And basic prompt writing technique 5, know when to move on. And this is probably the hardest one to figure out. Does anybody have an example of this already? I'm sure you probably do. A done and dirty example of this? When you try to get an answer and it's running you in circles?
Yes, I have an example.
Go ahead.
Well, for one, like when you're trying to actually get it to help you with debugging and troubleshooting something, and you pretty much place the error code that you're getting. You may even want to add some of the snippets of code itself where you feel the error is happening at, and no matter how many different ways you try to ask the GPT to assist you in debugging the error, it just can't seem to figure it out, and you just throw your hands up in the air and just give up.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've had similar stuff.
And guys, you're going to run into a situation where these LLMs, and I'm sure you've run into this before, where you keep asking the question in different ways and you're being specific, and let's say you're following best practices, and sometimes it'll loop you back to an old response that it gave you. Has that happened to you guys?
Yes.
All right. Anytime that happens, they don't know the answer. They just have to give you something, right? So when that happens, curtains, move on. Make sense? You know what's another technique that's not in here that I sometimes try, right? Use a different LLM. ChatGPT can't get it. Maybe Gemini will. Gemini can't get it. Maybe Gronk can get it. Now, if you've tried those three, or I don't even know, there probably is more, I don't know, then it's safe to say that they don't know it. You're going to have to figure it out. Make sense? I'll give you a real example. I was writing a cloud formation template, and it's just infra for AWS. And there was a specific property that I was trying to overwrite in the cloud formation template, and it wasn't working. So all my info was failing because it was reading it as already there, so it couldn't build on top of it. And I used every resources at my disposal to get it, and I was stuck on it a day. Turns out where I found the answer was on GitHub issue. Let's see if I can find it. GitHub issues. That's a website, right? Yeah, it was creating an issue. It was one of these. Okay. I found it on GitHub issues. Someone had figured out the answer. It was a simple Boolean in the CloudFormation template, and they had posted a comment under it, right? And it had the most upvotes, and that's where I found my answer. Well, why can ChatGPT or any of the internal tools that I have find the answer? Because the break was like 6 months old, right? So I had to find it. Some hero posted it on like GitHub issues, and I was able to solve my problem, right? And it was literally simple property name true, and that fixed my problem. Right? They're not going to be able to catch that stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of those issues are like that. So there you go. Okay, so know when to move on, super important thing. So all the models are trained a little differently, right? And a lot of the parameters and the weights of things. Ultimately, an LLM is what? Does anyone know? It's just a what? In its most simplest terms. Just a, what kind of model is
Just
it?
um,
It's just a statistical model, right? So in its most grotesque oversimplification, right, is all the words that you punch in, right, i.e. known as tokens, right, are just turned into vectors, right, a bunch of numbers, and your statistical like numbers correlate very strongly to this response, right? And it spits out that, hey, these words combined together most likely result in this output, and it picks it. I think a while ago with ChatGPT, I think there was some issue with like how many R's in strawberry. Do you guys remember that one? And it couldn't count the number of R's in strawberry. You guys remember that?
yeah, I remember
Okay.
that.
Yeah, if you
It
remember that
struggled
one,
with math at first too.
yeah. Because the LLMs, and I think this is a misconception, LLMs can't understand things the way that humans can. They can't read things. They convert everything to vectors, right? And then they spit out the most likely statistical response. That's it, right? And this is my take. You can take it, you can not take it, you could hate it, you could think it's short-sighted, right? But when Altman and a lot of those guys try to pump up their stock and say, hey, we're close to AGI, if you've been into dev and you've been trying to work through a lot of these problems, you're going to realize how far-fetched that actually is right now, right? Is it an awesome Google? Yes, awesome. I love my Siri. I love all my Alexas, and I love all that. It's awesome, easy, right? But when it comes to really solving these big complex problems, right, and optimizing big architectures of complex applications, man, like that's going to take a team of really smart people. And an LLM is very far away still. So your job is safe. Don't worry. Or your future job is safe, I should say. Okay. Concept 2, chain of thought prompting. Since validation is a key component in ensuring quality outputs results, chain of thought prompting can be useful in further breaking down response to help isolate hallucinations or bad data. What's a hallucination? In its most simplest terms.
When it just makes up the answer.
Yep.
Yeah, it has to give you something. That's probably one of the most important things you need to learn. It has to give you an answer. It's never going to say, I don't know. And sometimes you just have to say, I don't know. Big flaw of LLMs. All right.
You can tell it to tell you I don't know.
But it
And
never does, though. It ignores
it
you.
will say, it never full out does it, but it will, you can say, hey, if you don't know, just say something, and it will stop making it up. It'll just be like, it can't be done, or
sometimes.
But it still won't hold that for very long. Like it'll do it for a few
Yeah.
prompts, and then it'll start doing it again.
Yeah. So it has to give you an answer. It's just kind of how it's built. All right. So two sides to this technique are how you lead the LLM, but how you craft your prompt, and how you can extrapolate patterns by breaking down the LLM's output into sequence. Let's take a look at chain of thought prompting. Example 1. Roger has 5 tennis balls. He buys 2 more cans of tennis balls. Each can has 3 balls. How many tennis balls does he have now? The answer is 11, right? But the response is the cafeteria had, what is it? The model output. Wait, what does it say? Oh, yeah, the second one. This is a different example. The first one is right. The cafeteria has 23 apples. They used 20 to make lunch and bought 6 more. How many apples do they have? It's 27. What's the real answer here? It's not 27.
Should have been 9.
Yeah, it should have been 9. What happened? In its simplest forms, what happened here? What happened in the LLM's mind? Or yeah, I don't even know if you can call it that, but
It was probably just adding the cans as balls.
no. But I got that one right, right? But the second question, right, it gets wrong. The cafeteria had 23 apples. They used 20 apples to make lunch, about six more. What do you think is happening? Just in its most simplest form.
It's using the previous prompt to tack onto the next prompt, and so it's mixing up the two questions.
Yeah, it's getting
together.
it's getting confused, right? It's just that's it, right? All the vectors are getting crossed, right? And it's getting confused, and that's okay, right? Let's do a slightly better example. This is chain of thought prompting. Roger has 5 tennis balls. He buys 2 cans of tennis balls. Each has 3 tennis balls. How many tennis balls does he have? Roger started with 5 balls, 2 cans of 3 tennis balls each. 6, it's 11. The answer is 11. Okay, now let's look at the second question. The cafeteria had 23 apples. They used 20 to make lunch, bought 6 more. How many apples do they have? And it gets the right answer. Why does it get the right answer in the chain of thought prompting and doesn't get it the first time? The answer is right here.
Oh yeah, because in the answer in the second one, it gives why that worked.
Exactly, right? You kind of have to walk the LLM, right? And give it very specific instructions and examples, right? So it can follow your thought process and the relationship between the question and the answer to get you literally the most correct answer that they can. When you're asking questions to LLMs, you're effectively training them. So you're saying, hey, you're this person. I need this. I need it in this output. Here's an example of what I want, right? And hopefully they get pretty close to what you need. And here's the thing. I know I've been kind of like really kind of talking about the limitations of LLM. Just know that they don't have to be perfect to be useful, right? If they can get you on the right track or closer, that helps, right? I know I've kind of talked down LLMs and how limited they are. They are, right? But again, they're still pretty useful. Even though they're not always right, they can get you a little closer, and that helps.
I think on a point on that is as long as you understand their limitations, they're a great tool. Like if you understand how much what a hammer can do, when you'll know when to use the hammer and when not to, and what to use it for.
Exactly.
That's a great analogy. Yes.
Yep. Very good, guys. Okay, this next part just kind of goes more about the same. We're going to just go right on to concept 3, LLM and prompt drift. It's possible for LLMs to return different results for the exact same prompt. Does anyone know why? I'm just focusing on this right here.
Well, it does do that. So
why does it do it though? Does anyone know?
Because when you create a prompt for the GPT, it basically comes out with a lot of different answers, and it'll give you the best. Say it comes up with 10 answers, it'll give you the top 3 answers that it found, and then it'll take that top 3 and spit out one of those. So if you ask the same question again, then it'll just kind of run through those same 10 answers that it had before, and it'll just pick another one.
Yeah, it's simple answer. It's non-deterministic, right? So if you ask the same question today or tomorrow, or slightly different LLMs, they might give you different answers, right? They might be similar, right? Or they could be vastly different depending on how they tune the model, right? So keep that in mind. You're not always going to get the same answer, right? Because they're non-deterministic. There isn't like like if I asked, hey, what's the most optimal way to solve this coding challenge in Python? I'm not always going to get the same answer, right? Sometimes I might get the most optimal solution available. Sometimes I might get a slightly less efficient solution, right? Both will probably solve the problem, but they'll differ in efficiency, right?
And
Not
sometimes change based on your previous prompts too and what you seem to
ex
like.
Yeah, exactly. If you've been fine tuning the LLM, asking it a bunch of like coding questions, it's going to be really zeroed in on that, right? But if you're talking about English literature and you randomly hit them with, a C++ coding question, it's going to probably throw it off and it's not going to be as good. Make sense?
Yep.
So that's prompt drift. Concept for error cascading. If the original repeated prompts returning significantly different results are occurring within the same time frame, or if the results are simply deviating further and further away from the expected output, it's possible that some form of aberration has been introduced to the prompt chain. This is really just a result of bad data permeating the prompt chain as a result of poor prompting. In this scenario, it might be best to create a new thread and start over with more clearly defined prompts. I'm sure if you've messed around with LLMs a little bit, you kind of run into a situation where it just keeps running you in circles, not answering, right? At that point, two things. One, probably move on, but definitely if you need to close out of it, clear everything, right? And maybe try a different LLM or go back to that one after some time, right? Because you've more or less just confused the LLM, right? And it's not going to be very helpful when it's confused, unfortunately.
I would add you said earlier where it kind of starts repeating. Sometimes you get it from doing that too. Like once you've done too many bad prompts, it'll start
Exactly.
repeating and you just can't get it out. Just starting a new chat sometimes you can fix that. Yeah.
Yep. So a super important thing to remember when you're working with them is if you ever confuse it, it's really not the LLM's fault. It's your fault, right? You copy pasted a bunch of like bad code. You weren't specific enough, right? Uh, Too many bad prompts, right? You have to understand the limitations of LLM. You have to kind of set them up for success so it sets you up for success, right? So I know we all get frustrated if you use them a lot when it does that, but just know that's on you, right? It's a machine, right? It's not a thinking, living human being, right? All right, so summary, key takeaways, and we'll jump into your exercises here. Techniques, be specific, set limits, provide deeper context, be prepared to iterate. Very rarely does it get the right answer on the very first iteration, unless it was something pretty straightforward and your prompt was amazing. Recognize bad prompts and always be prepared to validate results. I had a student maybe 2 cohorts ago ask me about how useful LLMs are. And I gave the example of LLMs actually become slightly more useful when you know how to code and you know what you're doing. This is why. I will ask a very specific question, how to solve my problem to an LLM. I'm just using ChatGPT as an example. I'll ask it, and when it gives me the output, I know what I'm looking for. Let's say it'll give me 5 different things to try. I've already tried 1, 2, and 3. I have no idea what 4 is, and 5 I know doesn't work. What does that tell me? Out of the 5 choices that it gave me, only 1 is viable. So I can try 4. Does that make sense? Not only is it more useful when you already know what you're doing, right? But you can also ask it better questions. So that just amplifies its usage to you personally. Make sense? Okay. So there you go. Recognize bad prompts and always be prepared to validate results. Always, always. Concepts, breadth versus depth. Remember, what are you looking for? Just a down and dirty Google search, or do you need some depth behind it? Chain of prompt, chain of thought prompting, and when to use it. Especially when it's something somewhat complex, you're going to have to kind of walk it to your answer. Prompt drift, fine-tune prompts to mitigate variation in responses to the same prompt, happens a lot. Error cascading, bad prompting, querying can introduce bad data, right? And a lot of the times, some LLMs are better than others for a couple of different reasons, but really one of the main reasons is the quality of data that you feed it. And some LLMs, really, that's the only differentiator, right? Some people clean data, right? Augment data in all the right ways, so their model is better. It's really just that simple. So these are the challenges that we're going to work on here in a second. We can get started now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open breakout rooms, and you're going to jump into your own breakout room and start working through reading errors. And if you finish that, you could jump into prompt evaluation. And after a little bit, depending on how people are finishing, and I'll jump randomly into the different groups, the different rooms, and kind of see how you're doing with them. Make sense? Alrighty. Give me, see if I can figure this out. Let me pause. Did I pause it? Breakout rooms, there we go. And this will be a pretty common thing. Open breakout rooms, start working on it, assign automatically. There you go, open all rooms. Go in there, start working through your challenges, reading errors, and I'll jump into your rooms periodically. Oh, if you have a question, though, ping me on Slack.
Hey, Guillermo, do you mind if Adam and I get together in room 12?
I would advise that you work on it individually, and I'll jump into a rant about that later.
Okay, okay. I guess I need to get back into room 11.
Yeah. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let's go through this. How do you execute this file? Anyone? Not sure if they taught you this or not.
Python. Well, yeah, if you have Python set up as an alias, you can just do Python.
It's not an
the
alias, right? It's just the name of the program.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Python is that errors? Is that what that says?
Yes.
Errors.py? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Python errors.py.
Okay. And I run it. What is that saying? What is this command? What's happening here? What are you telling the computer to do?
Well, you're trying to tell it to print it out to the console, but
Not quite. Be very. I'll ask that question again. What does this command do? What am I asking the computer to do?
oh, that command. Okay. Well, you're asking it to execute that file.
That's it. Using the Python program, right?
Right. Right.
That's it. How many of you press this little button? Don't press the little button. Use everything in the terminal. Why do I say that? For right now, it's really important that you get comfortable with the terminal, right? So execute everything in the terminal. You'll run into programs that will have like a main function or something, depending on which programming language, and they call it the entry point to your program. You need to know where that is and how to execute that. Remember, a lot of these applications don't have GUIs, right? Users like you and I have GUIs, but there's a lot of applications that just run, right, on servers without GUIs, right, that execute scripts, that enter, right, at the starting point of an application, right, typically a main function, right, and then that's how the entire application runs. It doesn't have a button, right? That button is known as an abstraction, right? It abstracts what exactly is happening. When people press a button, they don't know what's happening. Oh, I'm pressing the button. Well, what's it doing? It's running my program. What does that mean? What do you mean it's running your program? It's just a file. Oh, it's executing your file. Oh, okay. It's grabbing the Python program that's installed on your computer and it's executing the errors.py file. You get a little closer to what's exactly happening on your computer, right? Not as deep as zeros and ones, right, in binary, but good enough for our use case. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is how I want you, and if you had a JavaScript file, it'd just be node dot, index.py or whatever the name of your file was. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, super important. So here, I'm just gonna kind of walk through the example without using as few resources as possible. So here I just go up arrow, I run Python, and I can tell that there's an error on which line?
13. I'm sorry,
13.
33.
Yeah,
33.
33, and I can tell that it's missing a quotation mark, right? It's a string. Cool. I can clear my terminal. I can run it again. And then I can see that there's an error on line 153. So I can go down there. It says it right here. Right. And typically,
Yeah.
if you use JavaScript or some kind of web application, it'll typically give you the line number and then the character number. Right. So you can go to like line 153, character 77. Right. So your IDE is there to help you out. Okay. So listen to it. So here I can tell it's line 153. And there's an uninspected indent, right? It's trying to help you out. This is indented too far. It should be flush. Boom, fixed it. Okay, let's run it again. And we see there's another error, line 43. Cool. Line 43. I go to 43. It says there's a typo. Print. Cool. Save. Run it again. Line 60. Cool, 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 cool. My func, I'm fine. Okay. What's wrong here?
The my func is not defined yet.
It's not defined yet. What does that mean?
Meaning the definition is down right below it on 63, so that should go above it.
And the way the Python executes is top to bottom, right?
Mhm.
So you can grab this specific line, and it's just going to be a matter of doing what?
moving it down below the
Yeah.
actual
Yeah, you
definition.
just move it down. You can do up option up arrow. You see that the squigglies go away, right? That's your IDE trying to help you out. There you go. Cool. I got rid of the squigglies. I can run it, and as long as there's not an error in that exact same line, I know that I fixed it. Okay, cool. There you go. Now it says, "How are you? Hello there. I'm fine." And then it goes into an error. It says, "Most recent callback file errors.py line 86." Let's look there. It says line 86. Okay, it's saying that there's an error here. And it's saying attribute error dict object has no attribute first. What is this saying?
It's basically saying that you have not given it a parameter or variable of or yeah, parameter or variable of first within the object.
Does the object have a key of first though?
Looks like it's confused where to pull from. Without the brackets after object, it doesn't know where to pull from.
Well, yeah. Well, it's in the way you're actually calling it. Uh, with the object, you can't use dot first. You have to actually use bracket. I believe it's some type of bracket notation, right?
Bracket notation.
And then spell out first. Yeah.
Let's see. Let's run it again. As long as we're having the line on line 86, we know we got it. That looks right. Didn't error out on line 86. Now we have an error on 102. Okay, let's go there. 102 B, and this is just a simple typo. 3. Sweet. All right, I run it again. It says, "How are you? Hello there. I'm fine." 1-3 trace back. We get an error on line 114.
Index out of range.
What does this tell you?
It's out of bounds.
Yeah, it's out of bounds, which means I'm trying to index something that doesn't exist in my list, right? So this is index 0, 1, 2, 3. So the max is 3. So if I wanted to get 3, I shouldn't get that error anymore. Before it's out of bounds, it doesn't exist. Okay. So I shouldn't get a line on 114 here. And I don't. I get a line on I get an error on line 125. Cool. Line 125. What's happening here?
You're trying to is that a plus or multiply? You're trying to basically do some type of calculation with the string and a number.
Yeah,
Which
Python won't let you do that. If this was JavaScript, what would happen here? What would be the result if this was JavaScript? Anyone know?
it would be 59 in yeah, it would come out with 59.
It'd be 59 in string, right? It's
Right.
called data coercion, right? This is kind of like one of the very simple, like when people write code, right now it's hard for you to kind of look at code and see whether it's good or not, right? Sometimes people think, oh, it's shorter, it must be better. Not necessarily, right? Recursion is typically some of the shortest code you could ever write, and very rarely would you ever actually write that in production level code because it's not very efficient, right? So that's not always necessarily the case. Typically, more readable code and more maintainable code is preferable. But it kind of starts to point to how deep of an understanding of a language that you have. And it's really important that you right now you start getting a really deep understanding of languages, of everything you're about to learn, and put as many hours as you can into this. Because when you get to your technical interviews, right? You got this from the Gulf students, right? I can't remember who asked about how prepared do you feel, and their assessment was more or less accurate. If I had to give them a number, I would have given them the number that they gave themselves, right? For the simple fact that once you get to that interview, you're going to be being interviewed by a bunch of grumpy mid or senior level engineers that don't want to be there. They're just doing that for their promo doc, right? And I have 2 liberal arts degrees. They're both BS. Tech, this is not a place where you're going to be able to fake it till you make it. They're going to see right through you, right? You're not going to be able to BS your way through interviews. Like the minute that you don't know something, the answer is I don't know, right? Because they're going to be able to suss you out very, very quickly. That's one of the things that I love the most about software, right? You just can't BS your way around it. Either it works or it doesn't. If either you understand deep architectural design for big applications or you don't. Make sense?
Yeah.
I went to a liberal arts college. I BS my way through it. I know how much it just doesn't work here. Okay, so it's really important that you understand that. This is a very simple example, right? But this could easily be, as a new junior dev, a question you would get, right? One on data coercion or something like that, right? Or a simple, very popular question, something that is like, hey, you go to google.com on your website. Can you just give me a very broad overview of what happens when you type google.com into your search bar? Right. Very common question. What does happen? Right. Do you understand that, that gets converted to an IP address, right? That it resolves in DNS, right? That hits a server with a domain name. Do you understand all that? I don't know. Do you? Right. That's complicated. You're not going to be able to BS your way around that, right? That's going to be hard if you're in that seat. And trust me, I only say that because I've been there and I got my face stomped before, not knowing something. Okay, so this in JavaScript, it would work and it wouldn't throw an error, right? But in Python, this doesn't work and it does throw an error. So what's the issue here? How do we fix this?
Either remove the quotations on 5 to make it an integer, or add quotations to 9 to make it a string.
Yeah, that's it. Doesn't really matter. I'll just remove it and make it a number. Cool. Run it again. Trace back. Now I'm at 142. It says I in int. Int object is not iterable. What is this saying?
Not
There's
a oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say there's no range, so you're trying to loop through an integer.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even necessarily need a range loop here. This is a real loop, but the issue is that my int is an integer. It's not a what.
It's not an array or an iterable object is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's not an object that you can iterate over. How are you going to iterate over the number 4? You can't, right? So that's the error that it's throwing. Now, if my int list, right, and then you make it a list, right, and then you run it, my int list, and then you run it, that won't throw an error because now you made it an iterable, right?
Right.
So then you run it again, boom, and it runs everything. How are you? Hello there, I'm fine. 137, whatever, code between. Now there's no errors. Now, was this the most efficient way to do this? No, but I wanted to show you that, hey, I can work through this with just the errors, right? And this is a very simple example of something you will do on the job, right? You'll be handed an application and then you'll be cut a ticket to like fix something or update something, right? And then you'll spend some time looking through the application, how all the data flows, right? And then you'll try to run the application. And then you'll realize that there's no good documentation. So you're trying to figure out, well, how do you start it? Is there any documentation? And then it's always broken because some dependencies got out of date or something like that. So then you're literally just running through the errors until your application starts. And once it starts, you can kind of go about your business and to fix the feature or add the functionality that your ticket wants, right? So this is grotesquely oversimplified, but something you're going to do when you're handed a new application, right? Figure out kind of how it works. And this is just one file. Even small applications, there are dozens of files, right? So when you start to run the application, you're just going to throw a bunch of error messages and you're going to fix one by one, exactly like this. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so if you had help from ChatGPT, you probably shouldn't need any, but that's okay. Just as long as you understand exactly what's happening, that's really the most important thing. So here, pretty straightforward. Did anybody get to the second exercise by chance?
I did.
One person did. You did, Cisco?
Yeah.
No one else got it? I need to know. That's okay if you didn't.
Nope.
I didn't
Okay.
finish it, but I made a pretty good attempt and not quite though.
Okay. Gotcha. So we'll go back into breakout rooms in just 1 second, and I'll open the rooms. I had a very good question earlier today. So I'm not quite sure. Ask the other instructors, but typically when I'm the instructor, I always break you out into. I can stop sharing my screen here. I always break you out into individual rooms, and I really ask you to work individually. You will get a lot of time to work in pairs and in groups, especially on your group project. But I think early on is really important that you really develop a deep understanding of the everything that you're learning by yourself. Obviously, if you need to ask questions or lean on people, that's fine. But what I have found in the 3 years of doing this is that people typically would use peers as crutches and they won't learn as much, which is fine. You get past the cohort or whatever. But I kid you not, when you get in those interviews, it's just you, right? And a lot of the times it's more than one person, minimum two people interviewing you. And sometimes you have, I'm sure you guys already know, right? Tech interviews are notorious for being very long, 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds, 8 rounds is not unheard of, right? So, and that's what makes it like you're not going to be able to BS. You can fool one person. You're not going to fool 5 people. You're just not going to. Either you know it or you don't, right? So for me, and it's something that I constantly preach, really try to learn it as best you can on your own, right? Because when you're in that interview, you're interviewing with these people that are going to give you a job, man. Like you're in no man's land. So you need to be able to really answer these questions. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So what's going to happen is I'm going to open the rooms again. I just did work on the second challenge. I'll touch base with you, Cisco, see where you're at.
Okay.
All right. I'll open the rooms. Wrap up. We're going to cover a couple things before we wrap up tonight. In 1 second. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yes.
All righty. So this is the curriculum page right here on GitHub. Do you guys clone down all your curriculum? Yes. So you do something like this. You get here, you copied this, and then you cloned it into a folder, called it CP Code Platoon something class. Yes. You guys did something like this?
I didn't do that. No.
Okay. That's okay if you didn't. That's okay if you did. I just want to point something really important out here in a second. So however you want to organize your curriculum and organize all your assignments is up to you. But I just want to cover this one really important issue here, this important thing here. So I'm going to go ahead and clone it here inside this folder that just created, called it CP for Code Platoon. So I'm going to clone it, give it a second. It's going to download everything. So now I'm going to have a folder called curriculum, which is exactly what this is, right? I have all of this, right? That's the name of the repo. It's called curriculum. This is everything that I need for the class. Oh, wait, give it a second. Did I just interrupt the download? No, just needs a second. Okay. So while it's downloading, how did the assignment go?
Good.
Easy?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. The hardest part is coming up with prompts.
That is the gist of it.
Yeah. Thinking them through.
Did
I
it
was
did any go ahead.
I was just going to say I was trying to stick to one topic. That was the other thing, I was trying to stick to one topic and elaborate as I went down the different steps, and add more additional context or whatever within the same topic. That was the hardest part. Yeah.
Give me 1 second. I interrupted this. I have no idea what that's so slow. That shouldn't be so slow. Let me try this one more time. There you go. I don't know what was happening. Okay, good. Did anyone finish by chance? It's okay if you didn't.
I did not finish. I got to the block quote part, and I'm hoping you're going to go over that so I can sleep tonight.
Block quote in the second assignment?
Yes, on the second assignment.
Block quote. What exactly are you referencing? Shame. 5-element prompting. What section are you referencing?
I keep muting myself. What was that question, Guillermo?
What part are you describing?
When you're actually trying to get the prompts in.
What do you mean?
Well, and the you know how you go down and you get down to the place where you create the directory for solutions. And inside that solutions, there should be you create a file so you can start creating prompts.
Okay, yeah.
And so I guess I just need help with the prompt section.
In creating the prompts?
Yes. Well, I mean, not like actually coming up with the topic, but just actually inputting it into the terminal.
It's just a file, right? You don't input them into, I mean, you could, but that'd be a pain. Just use VS Code, right? It's just a file they just write into, right?
Yeah, I got to that point.
I think all right, just if you paste the if you take that text file and then you're just putting your prompts into the sections into that block quote there, I think is that what you're referencing?
Yeah, that's it right there.
Yeah, just plug them in there and just recreate the steps there, and then I think you'll be good.
Okay, gotcha. Thank
I
you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's also the art. There's in the solutions folder. There's also a kind of a template. It has J Bautista MD.MD in there. That's a template you could use to start off with, and just change your prompt in your change your prompt within the block quotes and basically just keep going from there.
Oh, perfect. Oh, thank you.
Okay, that helps. I didn't really understand the question. Okay, that works. Easy enough. Okay, good. So this is actually just one markup. You'll run into what's known as YAML at work. It's it's actually short for what is it? Yet another markup language. There's a lot of markup languages, and you'll find that a lot of the documentation, if any documentation exists at your company when you get there, it's in markup. So you're going to see that a lot. This is not the only kind of markup you're going to see. There's like literally a million different kinds. So this is just one way of doing things. Your internal wikis at work will all be markup as well. So just something to expose you to markup. You'll see it at work. This is just one example. Okay, so this finally finished downloading. And this is all my curriculum. I'm going to CD into curriculum here, right? And what do you notice? In my terminal. What does this tell you?
It's showing that it looks like you're in a curriculum, you're in the main branch automatically.
All right, so it tells you that this folder is being tracked by what?
Nothing.
No, it's being tracked by something. It's being tracked by Git, right? That's what the main tells you,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, it's strange. Mine says, well, yeah, I don't know if it has to do with the term, but mine always has Git after the folder itself that I go into.
Gotcha. It's just you can customize your terminals. That's why mine are sometimes color coded. You see that?
Yeah.
You see how the README here is not color coded? That means it's a file.
Right.
If it's color coded, it means it's a directory, which is just fancy for a folder, right? With files in it. Okay, so that's why. Super important thing. Let me do this actually. Let me try this here. Let me do this. Here's another terminal. I'm going to go into desktop and I'm going to create test 3, right? I'm going to ls and I'm just going to cd into the test that I just created. Test 3. So I'm in there and I'm going to go ahead and open, right, an instance here, right, of test 3. I'm going to open a terminal here. Why don't I have main branch here? But I do have it here.
Well, that's not a Git repo. That-
What does that mean?
Well, it hasn't been initialized as a Git repo, and therefore it's not being tracked by Git.
There you go. That's what I want you to get at. So here we go. Test three. This is not a Git repo at all, right? If I was to create a file, index.py, right? Notice I'm not getting, notice right here, I'm not getting any changes. Oh, sorry. I can do clear here. I'm not getting anything. It's not being tracked by Git. Does anybody know how I get a folder to be tracked by Git? What's the command? Anybody know?
Git init.
Yeah, it's just git init. See that? Now I have a branch called master, and there is a change. Now let me look at my change. This file was added. This folder is tracking one change on the master branch, right? And now it's being tracked by Git, right? So that's super, super important. Okay, so folders are not just magically going to be tracked by Git if you didn't make them Git repos. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, the reason why I mentioned that is, and I'm going to go ahead and close that out. I can exit out of this. Is because here someone has already initialized this as a Git repo, right? So it has the default branch of main. All right. So keep that in mind here. So if you already cloned all your exercises, well, you probably should have, but if you haven't, that's okay. It's day 2. You can figure it out. Let's go to modules 1 because this is where we're at. We're week 1. This is day 2. Day 2, go to the README. Actually, let's go to day 1. Let's go to week 1, day 1, because that's what you did yesterday. And let's do Get Poetry. That's the assignment that we were doing earlier, right? And then, give me 1 second. So it tells you to do all of this, right? Where am I going to do all of this? It says fork this repository, right? And clone your forked repository somewhere sensible on your machine. Where am I going to conduct step 2? There's a lot of right answers here. But there's a couple of wrong answers here that I want you to avoid. Where do I do this?
The clone itself, you're going to clone that within your directory that you got set up for the program. That's what I did anyway. So.
Okay, so where does it go? It says clone your forked repository. All right, so let's try that again, right? I'm going to create a new fork. Oh, I already have an existing fork, fine. Oh, I already did it. I should be able to refork it. I thought I could. That doesn't matter. Let's just skip to the second step, which is kind of what proves my point here, right? I need to clone it. Where am I going to clone it?
So it's redundant because you already have it. If you clone the original repo from the curriculum, that's the top level directory. So it should already be in there.
Okay, yes. Get Poetry is in there, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How am I going to push this change though?
See, that's why yeah, I didn't do it that way. So I'm still doing the individual clones
And
individual forks and clones.
Yeah, Cisco, that's exactly why I'm bringing this up, right? This is an issue. However you organize it is fine. However you organize it is perfectly fine as long as it works for you, right? This is something you need to think of, okay? Because typically students will throw it in here, right? Let's say I go to module 1 and I go to week 1, day 1, right? So I'm in curriculum. I go in here, I go, okay, so we're in module 1, right? My fundamentals. Let me make sure I get in there right. Okay. So I'm here, I'm in week 1. Cool. I'm in week 1. I go in here, I'm in day 1, right? Day 1. Okay, CD into day one. Okay, so I'm all the way in there. I'm in day one. I look in here and I can cap the readme, right?
Right.
It's Git poetry. Cool. So I'm in day one. There's just a file in here, and then people will start doing something like this. Git clone.
Oh yeah.
What did I screw up here?
Did you make 2 copies of the same file?
Yeah, but I made a bigger mistake than that because a copy you could just delete it. Here, what's gonna start getting mixed up here?
Well, it's going to mix up the source the source repo with your your
Copied repo.
your personal repo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna now you have nested Git repositories.
Hmm.
That's really confusing, right? Especially when you start making pushes to a specific branch, but you only want to push a certain folder as its own standalone repo as opposed to the big curriculum folder, right? So you need to be really careful. And the reason Cisco is doing it separately is because it's easier, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you want to do it that way, that's perfectly fine. The only reason I'm showing you this is to be mindful of what you're doing. Now, if you want to have a curriculum folder and then an assignments folder, right, inside a CP folder, and they're both separate, right, and everything in the assignments have their own folder for each week or each day that's get initialized, that's one way to do it, right? If you can nest them and someone keep them straight, which I doubt you can do that. But just be very mindful. If you want to, I think when I went through COVID, I did what Cisco did. I did all individual folders, and then eventually I just threw everything was on my computer, and eventually I just threw it all into one folder. If you want to do it that way, by all means, do it that way. The only reason that I bring this up is so you are mindful of it. Any questions about this? And it happens all the time. Students will get to their personal projects, right? And they'll try to push up like a personal project or even one of their assessments, uh, and they'll get add in the wrong folder and then lose half their stuff and not know how to get it back.
Yeah.
Right. But they're like, oh no, I made all these changes to my front end. Like, I have to have it. Where is it? And they got lost in their folders and their Git histories and their Git inits. Right. So then we need to jump in and try to help them salvage some of the work. Right? Or they didn't save it right, or they thought they saved it in a folder and they didn't save it in that folder. They get added in a different folder, so now all their stuff is lost.
Right.
Does that make sense, at least at a very high level?
Yes, I did it exactly the way you did it at the beginning of the class. I just created a code platoon folder and started my, you know, repos that way. So
Okay, so back to kind of the tenets of Linux of who you are and where you are. Always know where you are on the file tree. That's going to save you a lot of heartache, not only in this class, but once you get to your job as well. Make sense?
yeah.
Git is a pain in the butt. Try to get as best as you can with it. And if you finish an assignment early, there's 2 things that I would work on. If you ever finish assignments early and you've already looked ahead and you're comfortable with it, somehow you have extra time. Work on your Git. There's a lot of Git that we don't show you, right? We don't show you Git diffs, Git cherry picks, squash commits, a bunch of high-speed Git stuff, right? Get good with that because you're going to use it no matter what job you go to, you're going to go to that. The second thing I would do is I would really master Python. And the reason why I say Python, it's the easiest language to learn. And syntax is really easy and it's fast for coding assessments, where time is of the essence. No curly braces, all spaces. Python's the GOAT for coding assessments. So if I had to pick one, I take all my technical assessments in Python because this is by far the easiest, also has the shortest syntax, a lot of really high speed built-in stuff with Python, right? So if I ever had any extra time on any of the assignments, I would do coding challenges, as many as I could in Python, and I would work on my Git because it's the ability to get past technical assessments that's going to open more doors for you. And then Git is just, you're always going to deal with it. And it's not the most intuitive thing in the world. And you always run into problems typically, especially early on with, big merges. you're changing, you're merging your 30 files with 50 other files. You're trying to merge all these conflicts. And it's heartbreaking sometimes. Any last minute questions, guys?
So as far as our day-to-day assignments are concerned, what's the time frame that we should actually do the pull request for them?
I would do all the pull requests that you possibly can on as many assignments as you can. You're going to come to realize that they typically assign you more work that you can finish. It's typically relatively easy to get caught up the first week or two, but after that, it becomes kind of insurmountable because it's just so much work. So I would do as much of the assignments as possible and really just try to learn as much as you can. Like this markup thing, the zero prompt and the crash course and LLM prompting, all that stuff. You're not meant to become an expert because it's just too much, right? But exposure to it, right, holds a lot of value because when you see it again, you're going to be like, oh, I remember something like this, right? And it's going to accelerate your learning later. I think one of the golf and evening and weekend students said something like, if you can look ahead, it's going to help you. There's actually a scientific term for that. It's called pre-learning. And pre-learning really helps because even though you didn't get it the first time, now you're in class. Now this is the second time you've seen this, right? So you're going to be able to pick it up a little bit faster. So that's really, really powerful. So don't worry if like you're not understanding everything fully. Try to understand as much as you can, and eventually you'll pick it up either on the job if it comes to it, with like stuff that we don't practice that much, like Git, because I know I didn't practice Git very much, but now like a lot of the jobs that I have at work are Git related, at least like 20% of them, simply because it's just the application is just so big sometimes.
Right.
So there is like, we don't keep track of how many people turn in how many assignments, right? This is really just learn as much as you can. I try to finish as much as you can because ultimately it'll be up to you to break into tech, right?
Okay. Okay. May I add, guys, you know, don't get frustrated if it's not coming to you, fast enough, or you feel like you're not getting it. The best thing you can do is just like Guillermo said, is just practice, work with it as much as you can. Muscle memory. It's all about muscle memory for the most part, right? The more you do it, the better you'll get at it.
All right, guys. I will see you guys on Thursday. Thursday is an intro, kind of an intro to JavaScript, just a crash course on JavaScript for one day. Okay. See you Thursday. Get some rest.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Gary.
good night, guys.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.